Yep, the live feed is ready.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's the Community Safety Committee this morning, 15th of January. I'd like to welcome everybody who's watching us, and also all the members and the officers and people from the West Yorkshire Fire Authority. Yeah, so with regards to today's meeting, let's start from the agenda item 1, minutes of the last meeting, which was held on 30th of October 2020. Could you please, are you all happy with the minutes? And I'll take silence as a yes. Okay, that's fine. But any matters arising at all from the previous minutes?
Not from an officer's perspective, Chair.
Yeah. Anything from the elected representatives' perspective? Okay. That's the case. That's fine. I'll sign it off. I don't think we have any urgent items for this meeting today. But just a quick, since everybody's here now, just a quick update. Agenda item 6 on page 15. The performance report that we've got. I hope everybody, all the members, received an update. So the update is actually till today. So the performance management report, now that you've got, is actually updated till the 15th of January. So I hope all of you have received an electronic copy of that. Okay, going back to that, no urgent items, which is agenda item 3. Admissions to the public. If you have any admissions at all.
All agenda items are open, Chair.
Okay. Any item 5, any declaration of interest, declaration of disclosable pecuniary interest from any members or anybody? Okay, no. If that's the case, then we go to agenda item 6, which is the performance against the PMI targets 2020-2021. That starts from page 9. Is it Scott?
It is, Chair. Thank you very much.
Please.
So this is a paper for note. The paper starts with an introduction and then go through the information. So there are a couple of pleasing things that I'd like to bring before members' attention regarding this paper. I did send out the most recent version of our performance report this morning. So if with the Chair's approval, I'd like to use that as the baseline that I'd like to speak through, as opposed to the numbers that I've already submitted in this paper. Is that okay? Right, so the paper starts with arson. So it's a very pleasing year in terms of arson. We're currently 13% down on our target, and we are improving on where we were this time last year. Obviously, a little bit this will be down to COVID, but we've also had very, very strong prevention campaigns across the year in terms of moorland fires, in terms of bonfire work, and working very, very closely with the police across our districts with antisocial behaviour. So it's good to see that arson is down 13% on where we set our target for. When we go through into dwelling fires on page 11, this is section 2.7. Dwelling fires are down by 10% on the target. And what is pleasing to note right across these numbers is if we look at fire-related injuries, road traffic collisions, dwelling fires and non-domestic building fires, those kind of incidents where we do traditionally see people getting hurt, we are down right across the board. Dwelling fires are down 10%. Non-domestic building fires are down by 26.7%. Fire-related injuries are down by 27%. And what is really useful to note on this one is this is the lowest number we have ever had for West Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service. So we're currently on track to be about 140 fire-related injuries. This beats our previous lowest of 145. So it is an ongoing trend that fire-related injuries are decreasing year on year now. Malicious false alarms are down by 19.7%. One area where we have started to miss our target is actual rescues. And since the last report, we have seen 119 actual rescues, of which 19 were from RTCs, road traffic collisions. We had 21 lift rescues and 3 from flooding. The vast majority were from our 162 attendances where we attended to help the ambulance service gain entry. So it has been a busy period over the last month where we have been supporting our partner agencies. Road traffic collisions are down on target, 31.8% under, and total activity is slightly up at 0.8%, but we are seeing an ever decreasing number on that, and it is believed at this point that we should be under target by the end of the year in April. So on the whole, very, very positive for the organisation. As we move through this report, we're going to breakdowns across the districts, starting with Wakefield, moving on to Bradford. The numbers that we have reported and sent to you previously in the paper copies, we do see some downward trends, which is encouraging. Then we move through to Kirklees. Another area to note in Kirklees, and this does seem to be consistent with the vast majority of districts, is fire-related injuries, road traffic collisions, and arson is down right across the board. One area that has been drawing attention over the last couple of community safety committees is malicious false alarms in Calderdale. I have written a small commentary about the malicious false alarms in Calderdale, and they are confined to a small number of properties being responsible for the vast majority of false alarms. Since the last report,
could I just ask a question on those, if I may, the Calderdale one? You've said there they're attributed to 4 locations. Is that always the same person there in this supported accommodation? That's at the bottom of page 29.
Yes. So the majority of the false alarms are confined to 4 locations, but these locations are: one is sheltered accommodation, where we do have one individual who's quite a significant and prolific offender. We have resolved that issue now, so this is something that going back earlier in the year. We do have a number of town centre buildings which has high footfall, and it is very, very difficult for them to manage some of these false alarms. And also there's a little bit of learning we have to do as an organisation, in particular how we report false alarms. A good example of this is we have seen an increase of about 5 or 6 false alarm malicious since December. One of these was down to a young child in a school who pressed the call button more out of curiosity than out of malice. So there is a little bit more we have to do in terms of recording. So we will tidy that up and how we report this. It's just currently how it sits in our reporting system. Okay.
Is it still a? Could I just ask if is it still a problem, Scott, in the Borough Market in Halifax?
No, that seems to be improving.
Right.
It does tend to be more now our sheltered accommodation. We have got a couple of examples in Calderdale recently where there is a family that's been targeted by youths, and the youths are just calling in false alarms, trying to get an attendance to their house to be a nuisance. We have recently purchased some software which does allow us to pinpoint where these telephone calls are coming from. Obviously, we used to be able to do this when people were using phone boxes, which isn't always the case. We can always track telephone numbers, so we do know which telephone numbers are ringing into us, but we didn't always know the location of these telephone numbers. We do now have software which we can pinpoint where these telephone calls are coming from. So when we do have this kind of incidents now, we can report this to the police, and they do pursue these offenders.
Okay, thanks for the update then, Scott.
And then we're going to Leeds District. Again, particularly impressive across arson, non-domestic building fires, road traffic collisions, and false alarms, all showing very, very positive performance against the targets. Happy to take any questions on them, Chair.
Thank you, Scott. That was a good report. Just a quick one. I mean, the actual rescues, you said we were a little bit down by on the target. But I've got the old report, which was updated to December.
Yes.
I mean, we were in the green, weren't we? So the last few last 2 or 3 or 4 weeks have been perhaps really, really busy. Is that correct?
Yes, so since the last report, so the 2nd of December, when I printed this form off, there have been 162, for example, gaining entries for the ambulance that we've attended. Now, not all of them have required rescue. Sometimes we go because we haven't heard from an individual. When we get there, we effect entry, and that person isn't there, so that doesn't go down as a rescue. But there are a larger proportion of them where we do support the ambulance in that individual. So yes, it has been a busy Christmas period for us.
Brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, very good report. Thank you, Scott. We've got Councillor Angela Tate who would like to ask a question. Councillor Tate, please.
I think you've commented as, you know, it's good to see like lots of the colour scheme on this. There's not very many reds this time, is there? But you've commented that could be the effect of COVID. But your dwelling fires, I think, is really good considering that there are more people sort of locked in at home working and drinking at home potentially. So that's, you know, a really good, remarkable figure considering. But it was just, I'm a bit alarmed at Calderdale because it just seems to buck the trend. So you've mentioned your malicious false alarms, which is obviously part of the reds, but we've also got the primary fires and the actual rescues. So is there anything particular about those areas? Because it bucks the trend compared to the rest of the district.
Absolutely, Councillor. So in terms of actual rescues, this is a county-wide one, and we will start to see as we get more and more draw upon our services to support ambulance and police in effecting entry. We will see a slight rise in that. Across that time, I think, as I mentioned, we have seen a very small number of incidents that would traditionally be attributed to the fire service. So RTCs since 2nd of December have been 23, which is quite a low number. In terms of other types of incidents in Calderdale, yes, we have seen a slight increase. Primary fires does cause a concern, and if we look back over the last year, we do traditionally have quite a lot of antisocial behaviour and organised crime activity across Calderdale that causes issues. And what we do tend to see is lots and lots of cars set on fire. So the vast majority of primary fires we are seeing against Calderdale are car fires. For example, we had one incident which attributed to 3 cars being set on fire at the same time. We had 2 arson attacks on a particular house. So it is something we are working very, very closely with police and local authority partners, but it is proving challenging.
Great, thank you. Is that okay?
Yes, fine, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now we've got Councillor Mike Pollard, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just trying to dig a little bit further into this situation regarding dwelling fires and the number of fire-related injuries, which Councillor Tate has sort of expressed pleasure about, really, and it is a good outcome. I'm just thinking that the actual incidence of dwelling fires is down by 10% against target, but that really big improvement in terms of fire-related injuries, which doesn't seem to quite correlate. Do you think that's down to the causes of those dwelling fires being more along the lines of just stuff happens rather than human behavior? In other words, that sort of the incidence of fires caused by smoking and so on and so forth are actually reduced. And so although the number of fires is actually down by 10%, the number of injuries is down significantly more than that. Do you think that is just change of behaviour?
Absolutely, Councillor. There is a lot about change of behaviour. We do see much stronger and more stringent safety measures in terms of white goods and electricals. Smoking is down. We are doing as much as we can in terms of getting our messages out there. And I really don't want to overlook the amount of work we've put in terms of prevention. So absolutely, house fires are down. But at one point, for example, for chip pan fires, we used to give the message, tackle a fire, use a damp tea towel, put it over, and then. Whereas now the message is very much, don't risk yourself. Even a small fire can be dangerous to you. get out. And I would hope that some of this is about that message where people aren't even considering trying to tackle these fires now. So there is a mixture of both safety measures in the home, and also I think people are much better at maintaining their own safety in the home as well.
That's good. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Councillor Pollard. Any other questions or comments at all? Okay. If not, then we'll move on to agenda item 7, starting from page 35, and that's yourself again, Scott.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So this paper is about setting our performance management targets for 2021-22. Now, I know members of this committee have been asking about what the targets will look like based on COVID being a very different year. We haven't had the opportunity to fully understand the impact of COVID in terms of our key performance indicators. So what this paper is suggesting and asking approval from authority is that we set 3 years worth of targets prior to the COVID pandemic and use them going forward. There are a couple of interesting points to note for those councillors that are quite new to the authority, in that we do report on key performance indicators including arson, actual rescues, total activity, dwelling fires, non-domestic building fires, prevalence of false alarms, fire-related injuries, road traffic collisions and malicious false alarms. There are some incident types that don't fall into these national reporting arrangements, things like accidental secondary fires. So if somebody to have a garden fire or a bonfire, and if that was to accidentally get out of control and damage a fence, that wouldn't actually sit in any of these main types, but it would sit under total activity. So there is some difficulties if you were to sit and try and add up the numbers, they wouldn't always correlate as much as you'd expect. Additionally, the total activity number, which does consider every incident we attend, isn't made up of all the KPIs. So for example, if an individual lived in a home that was set on fire by somebody else, that resulted in 2 injuries, you would hit KPIs for arson, you would hit KPIs for dwelling fires and fire-related injuries. So one incident can report 3 different KPIs. So we just need to be a little bit careful when we are trying to add up and work our way through some of these numbers. So as I move through the report, annex for this report, performance management targets 2021-2022 does set out the targets we are asking approval for. This is on page 38, and as an example of what I was just speaking about, the overall total activity number for West Yorkshire we're asking approval for is a target of 23,990. However, if you were to add up all the numbers from the KPIs there, you will get 28,129. So I just want to make it quite clear, it's not as simple as just adding up the different incident types to get that total activity, because some can hit many different pockets. The targets we've set ourselves are challenging. I think we could make it very easy for ourselves and look at trying to achieve or easily achieving green across the board. But I think what we need to do is give ourselves a very stringent baseline, which we have to work very hard to achieve. And I think these targets do allow us to do that. So hopefully council has had time to read through and have a look at the targets. They are reasonably similar to the targets for this year. And what we have also committed to do is we will, in the commentary, reflect back on 2021 or 2020-2021, just to give an idea. So we're not completely wiping out this last year. It will be considered as part of our reflections. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Great, thank you. Another good report. Thank you for that. We've got, yeah, we've got Councillor Pollard. Sorry, I couldn't see your hand before. Councillor Pollard, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, that's all straightforward, really, and clearly stripping out the COVID year distortions from the averages is absolutely sensible. Just one little aspect where the use of the 3-year average 2017 to 20 doesn't quite seem to fit with the figures produced in the annex, and just for the committee's clarification, really. The actual rescues category, where the 3-year average authority-wide is shown as 862 on the paper presented first thing this morning, whereas the target for 21-22 is 1,655. Just for clarification, I'm presuming that is simply the sort of introduction, almost as business as usual. These rescues that are in fact assistance for ambulance service in gaining entry and that sort of thing, because obviously the figure is significantly different.
Yes, absolutely, Councillor. That is a major increase in the actual rescues, and some of this does go back to what I was speaking about before as well. So it might cause some concern that total activity doesn't seem to have increased to reflect that increase in actual rescues. But what we are seeing now in terms of a trend is, although we are attending less incidents that require rescue, we are seeing more rescues from them incidents. So where before we may just see an RTC requiring one person rescued, we might now attend an RTC where we actually have to rescue 1 or 2 people. So it's still only one incident, but we are seeing more people requiring rescue. So that's why the increase in actual rescues doesn't directly correlate to the increase in total activity over the period.
But it's actually the raw increase just in the actual rescue figure that is, because it's the thick end of, well, very nearly doubling actually. Where I mean, yes, the stuff does happen in terms of RTCs, and
yes.
Yeah, that there could be 3 people trapped or only 1 person trapped. But to make an assumption to form a target, I guess you have to work on the assumption that by law of averages, the number of casualties in any one incident is going to be roughly the same, unless you get a bus crash on the M62. But it's just that the very nearly doubled looks a bit strange, unless we were treating these assistance calls for the ambulance service, the medical rescue by virtue of a fire service gently opening a door for the ambulance service stuff. I was assuming accounted for most of that increase.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Councillor. Just like I say, as an example, we did attend 160 of these last month, as previously discussed in the paper. So that is a significant proportion of the rescues we're attending now.
That's fine, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else got a question or a comment? Well, okay. Not, we'll move on to item 8, which is the Primary Authority Scheme update. And I think it's from Chris, is that right?
That's correct, Chair. Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Yeah, this report is for information to members on the temporary suspension of the Primary Authority Scheme. Within the report, it is referred to as PAS, a short acronym. Looking back, the IRMP proposals, which were approved by the Fire Authority last December 2019, provide the opportunity for us to expand our fire protection team to ensure that we can continue to deliver our statutory duties. It's worth noting that the Primary Authority Scheme that we've been running over since 2014 is not a statutory duty. It's something that we took the option to introduce. In order to achieve those IRMP plans, it's necessary to look at how we sustain our fire protection team. So we've been looking at filling current vacancies that we've had, and then looking to recruit trainees into the team. And that's a piece of the work that we've already commenced. But I think one thing to note is that what we've seen, certainly since 2017 and the tragic Grenfell fire, is staff retention has been very difficult in fire protection. So we are constantly looking at how we can reintroduce people into the team. To recruit and train a fire protection inspector, individuals need to attend specific training courses which are approved under the National Fire Chiefs Council competence framework and carry out a significant amount of on-the-job training. Now, this whole package generally spans a period of about 2.5 years. And what we've found is that it's the on-the-job training which causes us some difficulties. trainees generally need to be visiting low and medium risk premises, and due to how our fire protection teams work, we are very targeted, and that targeted approach ensures that our fire protection inspectors don't currently visit low and medium risk premises. We're very much targeted towards the very high risk non-compliant premises, which is the correct approach. However, it then provides us with a lack of opportunity to provide that on-the-job support and training for new people joining the team. So it was therefore necessary to look at how we could free up some capacity within the team so that we can develop and support the new people coming in. So we considered what activities we have which are non-statutory duties or non-critical factors, and primary authority is one of those areas of activity which isn't a statutory duty, and that provided us with a bit of scope in terms of releasing the staff to be able to support the training of new starters. So in July this year, we introduced a temporary suspension on the scheme, and it is indeed that, it is a temporary suspension. I've written to all our partners, and a copy of that letter is attached to the report at Annex 1. And we've advised them of our approach, and from that letter you'll note that although we have placed the scheme on hold, we still are providing our partners with a level of assurance that we will continue to deal with reactive work. And what reactive work includes is it includes continuing to periodically review any advice that we've already issued them to ensure that it's current, up to date and relevant, and also to continue to review any enforcement action which is proposed against our partners. This latter one is the number one reason why a lot of businesses join the scheme, to have the backing of the authority to ensure that there's consistency and fairness. So I'm happy to take any questions. I mean, the paper is quite self-explanatory. I've given you a quick run through there, but if anybody's got any questions, I'd be more than happy to take them.
Brilliant, thank you, Chris. Any question, comments? Yeah, we've got Councillor Mike Pollard asking the question. Councillor Pollard, please.
Thank you, Chris. This is the report that I think gives scope for the most weary, in a sense, in that, given all the stuff that we can see coming down the road post various bits and pieces of the Grenfell inquiry and so on, would you say that this is an aspect of the authority's function, which if you were looking at a risk matrix, you'd stick this matter fairly well up towards the top right-hand corner. We seem to have a structural problem in getting staff, retaining staff, because obviously there's a significant leakage to the private sector post-COVID. Do you regard this as something which will potentially give the Chief Fire Officer some sleepless nights?
In terms of placing this scheme on hold, no. I do think that the primary authority scheme is a valuable scheme, and it's certainly something that I would like us to reintroduce, and that's why we've done it on a temporary basis. When we look at fire protection teams across the country, we have to develop our risk-based inspection programmes. And what we've seen over the years is that those risk-based inspection programmes have dwindled into being very, very pointed and targeted towards non-compliance. If you look back 15 years, we used to inspect lots of premises on a rolling programme. I think my personal view is that the primary authority scheme allows us to still carry out that kind of engagement with businesses who are willing to comply and support, and allows us to maintain the resources that we need targeted at the higher risk premises, whilst we work in partnership with those who are being proactive. So I think looking forward, I certainly see that the primary authority scheme will be embedded within our risk-based inspection programmes going forward. I certainly think it provides us with that opportunity of working with businesses, and as I've presented to the Community Safety Committee previously, the number of partners that we have, when we provide one piece of advice, the actual number of people who benefit that is significant, because the partners do adopt that guidance and support nationally across their portfolio.
Yeah, perhaps I didn't make myself quite clear enough. I'm not particularly worried about the suspension of our involvement as primary authority. It's more the impact of staff losses in the fire protection team, really. It's paragraph 113 of the report, really, which gives me ground for worry. Impact of further staff losses in protection could begin to have a significant impact on our ability to carry out statutory duties. With the background that those statutory duties might well post Grenfell significantly increase.
Indeed, and they may increase, they may change in scope, and and that's one of the reasons why we've had to take this decision, and put the plans in place so that we've got a robust team that we can deliver our statutory duties in the future. We are highly proud of the fire protection team and the work that we deliver, but we are mindful that there are pressures on the team and external factors that makes staff retention difficult. So we've started a programme after the IRMP last year, looking at how we can certainly retain those staff that we've got, but then also recruit into the vacancies that we have quality people who are going to stay with us. So we've looked at reviewing salaries, applying market supplements, and we're kind of halfway through that process now. And part of that process is to develop a new structure within the protection team that enables us to bring in people at a lower level rather than at an inspector level, what we'd call a business fire safety advisor, and for them to develop, so that then when we do, if in future we do lose fire safety inspectors, we already have a bank of people who are virtually qualified to step into their positions, which is something that we don't have at the moment. So I think the plans are in place to ensure that we've got that assurance going forward, but this was a necessary step to enable us to make those assurances.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Sorry, it was so difficult to unmute myself, and with the kids in the room, coming and going in the room, it's not easy. Sorry about that. Right. So moving. Any other questions? Oh, we've got John who would like to comment. John.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's just on the back of Councillor Pollard's comments in terms of sleepless nights, I suppose. Yeah, I think that's probably a true reflection in terms of maybe some of the feelings within the fire service more generally at a national level. I think, as Chris has articulated very well, then obviously with new regulations and the regulations changing predominantly on the back of the Grenfell Tower disaster, then this isn't just a West Yorkshire issue, it's a national issue. And I think, as Chris has stated, I think certainly the changes within legislative fire safety probably over the last 20 years and how the fire service has changed its inspection regime is part of that, in terms of we probably had very big fire safety departments which were being pared down over a number of years. But given where we are now, that there's not the people in the country who are qualified to take these positions up. It's a challenge every fire and rescue service have now got around bringing people in to train them up and develop them internally. But obviously with market forces, that is incredibly challenging, that once these people are qualified, then the private sector can pay an awful lot more than what we can afford to pay, unfortunately. And I think the thing that potentially compounds that is the funding situation for the fire service at a national level, certainly within England, because we've received grant funding on the back of Grenfell. That's not being built into our base budget. So going forward with more stringent regulation and a tighter inspection regime, then it's going to be a case of being able to provide the capacity to deliver that based on the amount of revenue what we've got to employ people as well. So it's not just about actually the top right hand corner of the matrix in terms of what needs to be inspectors. It's our ability to do that based on the level of funding that we get as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John, for giving us the insight into it. Is that okay with everybody? Yeah. Okay, good. So if you've got any more comments or questions, please do raise your hand. If not, we're going to move on to agenda item 9, which is the usual spotlight on service delivery case studies from page 45 onwards. Is it yourself, Scott, who's doing it?
It is, Chair. Thank you.
Okay.
So there's a short covering report here that introduces the spotlights on. But if Councillor's happy, I'll just move straight to the spotlights on. We have got 5 spotlights on here which demonstrate the ongoing work that we do to try and contribute to the safety and well-being of our communities. The first one talks about digital fire setting. Fire setting is young people in the home who tend to be occupied or have an unhealthy interest in fire. It's obviously a very, very difficult time with schools being closed, even now, particularly winter, people in the home. And there are issues that we do see with young people finding it difficult when they're currently developing social skills, you know, the challenge of their confidence and resilience. So what we did do is we quickly identified a way which we can continue delivering our fire setters program. So this is getting out to those young people who have shown a tendency to play with matches, fire, and some of these result from false alarms we have in the home, and some of them result from minor house fires as well. So what we did very, very early on into the COVID pandemic is develop a way which we could digitally target these individuals to continue delivering our advice, our support to the families, and also raise awareness for the young people and give them some support. So we did this through our youth interventions team, and since March 2020 we have completed 66 digital fire setter interventions, and we do have a very specialist youth interventions trainer, Kelly Walsh, who has helped us with that. And it's obviously a very, very positive story that it's a key part of our prevention role, and obviously could have a very, very significant impact on the homeowners and the individuals. So that's the first one. The second one is the spotlight on in Bradford, which is what we were doing around community engagement over the bonfire and firework period. Again, COVID made it very, very difficult to engage and get out there like we normally would do. We'd normally be working with local community leaders in youth centres and the like. It's been very, very difficult this year to do that. So again, we worked closely with the Riot Act, which is a theatre in education group, to develop some short videos which we're allowed to play in schools to try and make it clear about the dangers of antisocial behaviour, going over our messages about the impacts of irresponsible firework use and fire use, and this has been shared across all of the districts as well. It is really, really key to the fire service that we keep developing our approaches to meet the needs of other people, social media in particular. So this is a great example about how we are developing with the times to be able to get out there and reach people. The next spotlight on is a roundup of the year to date in Calderdale. So things that have been going on in Calderdale. For those of you who know Calderdale, it's got one of the finest beaches in West Yorkshire. Probably one of the other beaches in West Yorkshire as well, up at Gaddings Dam. We've been up there because it does lead to lots of some antisocial behaviour. We do have people using barbecues, sometimes responsibly, sometimes irresponsibly. We also have lots and lots of wildfires across the Calderdale, Kirklees, Bradford region. So this demonstrates some of the work that's been done in that area to try and prevent some of them fires. And I think the fact that if we look at the wildfire numbers that we've had this year, it has been very, very encouraging. On top of that, we have had people open water swimming. Now, we have identified that open water swimming does cause us lots of a significant risk to people across West Yorkshire, and we have had fatalities responsible from open water swimming. So we have been going out there giving advice and working with local partners, the local community wardens in Calderdale, and the police to try and give out the advice on these risks. From there, we go into new ways of community engagement in Kirklees. Again, alternate approach to meet the needs of the individuals there. So this is working with the safety rangers led by the Yorkshire Children's Centre. Traditionally comes in with our fire stations. Dewsbury plays a big part in this. We do have a contribution with Safer Kirklees, our road safety partnerships, West Yorkshire Police, and this gives an overview of the work we've been doing there to work with year 5 school children and continuing that interaction. It would be all too easy to try and pull away and close the doors during this time, but it's very much not what we want to do. We need to keep that momentum running, and this is an example of how we do that. And then finally, we get into Leeds and Wakefield's spotlights on. Leeds, obviously a very large district, a huge population and many diverse communities. This demonstrates how we continue delivering our safe and well messages with over 4,200 safe and well telephone assessments undertaken. And then also 500 interventions delivered on the doorstep. So these are for the most vulnerable people. So those that really would be at risk of fire were to occur. So we do have a triage process where we will risk our firefighters getting out there to try and make sure that those that really do need it will get the support they require. And then finally, we're going to Wakefield District and the work they've done about prevention in terms of domestic fly tipping, waste burning, obviously a nuisance issue with the potential to get out of hand. And another key part that Wakefield do raise in this spotlight on is about the collaboration with the local energy and affordable warmth team. Unfortunately, 3 out of the 5 fatalities in accidental dwelling fires we've had this year are responsible due to heating devices. So what we are doing now is entering into an amnesty arrangement with Wakefield Council where we can help replace those appliances that are faulty or unsafe with much safer energy efficient devices. So this is a really good example of a council-led approach to support fire service prevention. And happy to take any questions on that, Chair.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Burke, please, if you've got a question.
So it's a comment, Chair, if I may. Having been on the Fire Authority previously and been on the Community Safety, this is a new feature which I'm really impressed with. I think it's fantastic. I think it does a really good job in highlighting the excellent work that takes place throughout West Yorkshire with partners, and also impressed with the work that's taking place in Kirklees, engaging with all of the partners there to make a real difference in the communities and with the schools. So it's just a comment. Really impressed with this. I think it's a fantastic feature to have on this report.
Brilliant, thank you. Again, I would like to echo the same comment as well. Good work. Anybody else would like to comment or any question? Okay. If not, we'll move on.
Can I just say I'd like to add just add a comment really about and give some thanks to the collaborative working that's going on within Leeds, because like's already been mentioned, it's a huge area and very diverse, and I think they're working well with the in the triage with the different services and addressing mental illness as well. I know that some incidents have been addressed through the mental health, so it's good to see that is taking place within Leeds. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, good, very well done, Scott. That's good. So let's move on to agenda item 10, which is the fire protection prosecutions from page 65, agenda item 10, and I think it's Chris who's going to present that.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thanks very much. So yeah, this report provides members with information on a number, 2 prosecutions, successful prosecutions that have been brought for offences under the Regulatory Reform Fire Safety Order, which is the legislation that the fire protection team primarily deal with. Whilst the cases detailed in this report were brought earlier in 2020, a lot of the offences do span a number of years previous. And that is purely due to some delays with the court system, with identifying who the responsible person is, and cooperation from those responsible people. It's not a reflection in terms of how quickly we've been able to progress the cases. And in fact, we've currently got a prosecution investigation on at the moment where offences were found in 2015, and hopefully that will be resolved this year. So case one is regarding Wakefield Grammar School Foundation. And the history of this case is that my team received some plans for a building regulations consultation that showed the current existing plans of the building and the proposed plans of the building. When the team looked at the existing layout, we found that actually there were some concerns, primarily around cloakrooms within the schools. Now, for those that may recall, back in 1996, there was a significant fire at Armonbury School where a number of students were trapped in a classroom. A fire had developed in a cloakroom and a multi-shared area outside of the classroom, and the classroom only had one means of escape. The teacher with the children was unable to use the fire extinguisher, and they had to be rescued by the fire service. And that fire then prompted some changes in guidance. One of those key changes was that you should never have a cloakroom on the means of escape from a classroom if there's only one means of escape. You may be aware of a lot of schools where they've had external doors put on classrooms straight out into the playground, and that's as a direct result of those changes in guidance. So our inspectors made an attendance at Wakefield Grammar School and found some significant concerns with the cloakrooms. We also found some blocked exits, and primarily we also found some issues with the fire risk assessment. Now, what we found was that the fire risk assessor had actually identified the issues with the cloakrooms a number of years ago, but it had never been actioned. And then it got to the point where it just didn't, the risk assessor didn't incorporate the issues into the risk assessment. So we did a full investigation, which went to Leeds Crown Court at the beginning of last year. Both parties did plead guilty, so the risk assessor pleaded guilty to failing to carry out a suitable and sufficient risk assessment. And the grammar school also pleaded guilty to failing to make a suitable and sufficient risk assessment. Both parties were fined the exact same amount, so the school were fined £10,000 with £14,500 in costs, and the risk assessor was fined £10,000 with £5,000 in costs. If you look at page 67, I'll just talk you through the pictures just to give you a bit of an understanding of the issues. So image 1 on page 67 shows a corridor, and at the bottom right-hand side of the corridor, sorry, does somebody have a question? Just seeing a comment pop up.
Yeah, Councillor Austin, have you got a question? Because I can see, sorry, I can see your hand raised.
I'll just wait until the report being finished and then come in with a comment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, image 1 shows a corridor from a classroom. So the door to the bottom right is a classroom, and students and pupils would have to come through there and down quite a convoluted escape route out of that classroom. Image 2 shows, now this is within this class, this is the back of a classroom, and this was a secondary means of escape from a classroom. Obviously you can see the blue door to the back right of this storeroom, but it is actually a means of escape. You've got the red call point there to the rear of the door, to the right hand side of the door, but that was completely blocked and inaccessible. Moving on to page 68, image 3, again that's a means of escape from a single classroom with cloakrooms lining the means of escape, and should there be any sort of ignition introduced to any of those courts, then that means of escape will be completely impassable and the students would not be able to escape from that classroom. And finally, image 4 again, on page 68, that shows the length of one of the corridors. So at the bottom there's a door, that's a classroom door, and then on the left hand side there are 2 classrooms. All those classrooms leave into this corridor and head towards the camera, with cloaks lining that escape route. And again, if there was any significant fire within that corridor, then those students would have significant difficulties in escaping. Case number 2, just before I move on to case number 2, has anybody got any questions? Should we do it like that? So if anybody's got any questions in relation to case number 1, or would you prefer me to go on to case number 2 straight away?
Yeah, if you've got any questions for case number 1, then we might as well just go through them.
Yeah.
Councillor Austin, would you like to ask the question, please?
Yeah. Well done for picking this building application that's gone in. For picking this up and for sort of securing a prosecution, because I can't like this is still going on in school, and to see if there are any schools.
Councillor Austin, we can't hear you. It's not very. Councillor Austin, we can't hear you clearly. Could you repeat, please, if you don't mind?
Yep. So can you hear me now?
Yes, that's better, please.
I just wanted to say thank you, first of all, to the team for picking this up from an actual works that probably would have gone unnoticed, and also to say it's great to manage to secure execution. Put a risk here, and I just wondered how many other private schools that may have similar issues.
Yes, Councillor Austin. Sorry, because I think I've picked up half of that, but not all of it. So you are breaking up quite a bit. I'll try and respond and hopefully cover what you're saying. In relation to schools, what we do find is that many schools through the summer holidays will have works carried out, and a lot of that is on the back of trying to utilise as much space within the school as possible. Now our officers are trained to look at the plans that we receive and identify any issues, but certainly what we've found in the past is that we always compare current with the proposed, and this isn't the only case where we've found significant issues with the existing provisions that have been provided, and not just in schools. That goes for many other business types and properties. But that is the role of our inspectors who are looking at building regulations consultations. Whilst we don't enforce the building regulations, we are a statutory consultee under the fire safety order. So the local authority will pass us the plans and we will review them. We do work with local authorities and certainly the independent schools as well to try and support them. We've got a number of memorandum of understandings in place to try and ease issues like this, but clearly, we have a significant number of schools within West Yorkshire, and the responsibility at the end of the day does sit with them. We do try and work with them where we can, but obviously we can only deal with what we know about.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Pollard.
Thank you, Chair. With school governor hat on, of course, I've obviously always been well aware of issues about sort of having cloakroom facilities lining corridors, which has been a no-no for years. But of course, there's a slight tension between what Ofsted would regard as outstanding in terms of classroom display work and indeed display work down corridors. So you might get an outstanding from Ofsted, but an inadequate from the fire service. Is there any sort of conversation between fire services and Ofsted to feed this sort of stuff into inspection frameworks?
Yes, Councillor Pollard, there is, and in fact it's a piece of work that I carried out probably 18 months ago with Ofsted on behalf of the National Fire Chiefs Council. I had a number of meetings with their chief inspector, because what we found as fire and rescue services, not just in West Yorkshire but nationally, was that we'd be going in and inspecting schools and finding that every and I think the phrase that Ofsted uses, opportunity for learning. So every area of a school needs to utilise as much opportunity for learning, which means that schools are are pushed into creating displays where they probably wouldn't necessarily, think to put them. And then that has a knock-on effect when the fire service come in and carry out an inspection. So I had a number of meetings. We set up a memorandum of understanding, which has fed into Ofsted's inspection report now. So when Ofsted inspectors do go in, they've got an understanding of what fire safety measures should be in place within that school. And key times are certainly at Christmas when there's nativity displays in foyers and such. But yeah, that piece of work, and we ended up producing a national guidance document that also got circulated around fire and rescue services as well.
That's good. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Councillor Pervez, have you got a question? Please. Councillor Pervez, if you could kindly unmute yourself if you want to ask a question.
Yes, sorry. By looking at these pictures, obviously this must have been a really old school, because I work in a local school and we have all the children's coats hanging in a corner in a little area inside the classroom.
Yeah, I mean, some of the photos are from newer extensions within the building. So what we do find is if it's a new build school, then generally the provisions are adequate. But what then changes that is the management of the building. So as soon as people start to use the building, they say, well, actually, it'd probably be better if we put the cloaks here in this corridor out of the classroom. And that's the kind of education that hopefully these kind of cases will introduce into those who are responsible for fire safety within schools.
Yeah, thank you.
Are you okay with that, Councillor?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments at all? Yeah, if not, shall we go to case study 2 then, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So case study 2 is Trinity Hall student accommodation on Woodhouse Lane in Leeds. This is a 94-bedroom student residential development over 4 floors. The development does include various different types of construction, but one of the key things is that it does include timber frame construction. The building is on a sloping site, so the ground floor is actually above ground floor. So the staircases do need to be used by everybody going into the building. Back in September 2016, we received a complaint from a member of the public who'd arrived at Trinity Hall to drop his daughter off, who was going to be a student staying at Trinity Hall. And he was that concerned that he wouldn't leave her there and passed the details on to ourselves. We subsequently inspected the building and issued a prohibition notice immediately on the premises as the conditions were so dangerous, it wasn't safe for people to stay there. At the time of our inspection, there were 71 residents within the building, occupying the building, and they were rehomed by one of the responsible people into hotels. During our on-site visit, it was clear that the premises were totally unfit for habitation, and one of our officers, who's got over 40 years experience in fire safety, actually said that it is the worst conditions he has ever seen in a building that's been occupied. There were inadequate fire protection, compartmentation, the structure of the building was exposed, there were large amounts of fire loading, the fire alarm system was inoperable, and a fire within the building would have clearly spread throughout, affecting all those 71 residents. There was no fire risk assessment had been carried out, and there was no emergency evacuation plan either. Now, due to the ownership model of the building and the development of it, there were 3 responsible persons. They were APP Construction, Niche Homes and Trinity Developments. The case was heard at Leeds Crown Court again early in 2020, and all 3 defendants did plead guilty. And I think that's something that certainly I think is attributed to a lot of the work that our inspectors and certainly the legal team within West Yorkshire Fire Service should be proud of, because the amount of work and effort that goes into these cases is significant, and it shows when the defendants actually do plead guilty, because the evidence is so overwhelming. So all companies did plead guilty at the earliest opportunity, and therefore they did receive full credit for their guilty pleas. But as a result, the following sentences were issued as in the report at 1.27. So Trinity Developments were fined £160,000 with £6,000 cost. Niche Homes were fined £60,000 with £6,000 costs. And APP Construction were fined £450,000 with £9,000 costs. Now, as a total fine of £670,000, that is the largest fine in UK history under fire safety law. And the fine against APP Construction is the single highest fine against an individual company as well. I think the case really does demonstrate the gravitas, and the fines that were issued do really show how serious it was. What I'll do is I will talk you through the pictures as well, because I think, you know, certainly with this case, it does really demonstrate how poor fire safety provisions there were. So on page 70, image 1, that is the outside, the external of the building when we found it, when we received that complaint. As you can see, it looks like a construction site, and it was. You know, that is not what an occupied building should look like. That is a building still under construction. On page 71, image 2, that is one of the internal staircases. Now, the wooden boarding on the top half of the staircase, that is to provide 60 minutes fire resistance separation. As you can see, that, you know, obviously it's made of timber. There's massive gaps at the bottom of it, and it's covered in bubble wrap as well. So there's just no fire compartmentation there whatsoever. And the purpose of that boarding was to separate the construction site from the areas of occupation for where the residents were living. Image 3 shows the main entrance to where students were accessing and egressing the building. And again, that just gives you an understanding of the current status of the building. And on page 72, that's also the same picture of the same entrance. The two windows to the left, just behind the cherry picker, were occupied flats within the building. Then we've got image 5, which shows almost part completed corridor. But up on the top of the ceiling, there's what should be a smoke detector, but that is just the base plate of a smoke detector. The actual head of the detector hadn't been installed. And then finally, on page 73, image 6, for me, this is one of the key kind of components of this prosecution. We have 3 copper pipes going through 3 holes. And on 2 of them, you can see that there has been some pink foam, which is pink fire stopping foam, which in all accounts, you'd think, well, that's great. But to the right of those holes, there's 3 4-inch holes that have no fire stopping at all. But then more significantly, at the top of the breeze block, if you can see the silver corrugated roof, the roof is actually corrugated. So where the pitch of the roof raises up, you could actually put your hand over that roof and into the other side of the compartmentation. And that's a massive flaw in the whole construction of the building. And for me, that just kind of epitomizes the issues that not only do we find at this site, but certainly at other sites, you know, and certainly, you know, the standards of construction over the last few years, these are relatively common things that we are finding. So yeah, just to close, I think, you know, certainly as I mentioned, it's reassuring that a lot of the cases that we do present to court, defendants do plead guilty. I think it's, you know, it is a demonstration on the hard work and effort that the team put in, and I'm happy to take any questions on that.
Thank you, Chris. Really pleased with the report. I think it just shows the hard work that you've put into it and got the prosecutions as well. I mean, it looks quite a substantial amount, 670,000 from APP, you know, from one case, and the remaining from the other, in total 970,000. It looks like a huge amount, and obviously the costs were recovered as well, 40,000 in return. But to be honest, it seems like just a bit of a comment. It's like a drop in the ocean, to be perfectly honest, if you look at the bigger picture in terms of the kind of profits some of these companies are making. Yeah, some excellent examples in terms of, you know, fire study and whatever you for yourself, but really bad example in terms of fire safety. And it's you know, it's one of those risks, and it's like accident waiting to happen. God forbid if something like that would have happened while people were living in there, you know, it could have had really terrible outcome. So thank you very much, and well done for that. I hope you continue that, you know, in future as well with future constructions and all that, in collaboration with the planning department and so on. So thank you for that. We've got Councillor Renshaw who'd like to make a comment, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to thank the Fire Authority for all the work that they've done there. Like you've already said, it is like a drop in the ocean, and I do feel that it should be index linked based on the profits that they're making from those buildings sometimes, because it's just there's nothing on their part really. I'd like to know if there's any way that we could increase the enforcement of the planning regulations by incorporating the Fire Authority more, because quite often you find that plans are submitted, they go through as okay with all the things in place, but once the developers start building, that's when the risks are sort of incorporated, because they don't always stick to what the regulations have said in the first place, or the planning applications.
Just to come back on that, Councillor Renshaw, it has been a problem that we've experienced over a number of years, but through the work that's been carried out on the back of Grenfell and Dame Judith Hackett's review, Fire and Rescue Services are going to be involved in the planning stages of new developments, specifically to start with high-rise residential buildings. But it's likely that scope will be extended to other premises. They're developing a whole new process of how buildings will be developed and built, called the Gateway, which it includes our involvement before the architects have even looked at designing the building, and before planning has been applied for. So it gives us the opportunity to get a voice much early on at the table to try and encourage the correct development of these buildings.
Yeah, I think that's great, and I just like to think that you're also included in the checking on those buildings to make sure that the developers are using the correct materials that are safe and, you know, fire friendly. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Councillor Renshaw. Yeah, good point raised there. Councillor Tate, please, you've got a question.
I think mine was more a comment really, is thank goodness for the gentleman that dropped his daughter off and deemed that not a suitable place to live, because it looks absolutely horrific. And given the fact, you know, it's other people's safety that were already living there, so it is a good piece of work, and thank goodness there was somebody there that did something about it.
Excellent. Yeah, I agree. Councillor Pollard.
Thank you. Again, just a comment really. I mean, obviously we appreciate that student accommodation is largely private provision, but I really do think that the universities do have some sort of basic duty of care for their students, and that they should have some involvement at some level with regard to this sort of development. Is that in fact the case now in any sense?
Yes, Councillor Pollard, yes and no. We have really good working relationship with the university fire safety officers and fire safety management teams, and generally what happens certainly within Leeds is that they have responsibility for a number of premises that we are in liaison with. But as you say, there are private developers who have got the autonomy to build a building and utilise it for whatever purposes they want. And unfortunately, within law, there's nothing that then requires the university to be involved in terms of how it works. What we do is within the scheme of work that we have with the university, they generally do have communication with a lot of their students. They have mail shots where we link in and provide fire safety advice to them. But one of the key things is getting that early engagement. And what we have found in the past is whether the block has been built as a private block of flats and whether it's been built as student accommodation sometimes changes during the development as well. So, you know, we might get the plans to say that this is going to be a block of flats. And once it's halfway up, they then change their mind and say, well, actually, we might utilise it for student accommodation. And even trying to keep on top of things like that's really difficult. But we do have really good working relationship with the university fire safety management teams, and we do address issues where we are made aware of them. But it is a very valid point and something that we are very well aware of.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Any other questions or comments, queries at all? If not, that was the last agenda item, unless we've got anything else to discuss, any other business. If not, well, thank you very much. It's been a very good meeting today, and I think there was lots of good reports as well. So thank you to all the officers who compiled the reports and did all the hard work. Thank you to all the elected representatives and everybody involved who attended the meeting and contributed to this meeting. Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon, and see you soon. Stay safe. Thank you.
Thank
Goodbye.
you.